Sabah al khair, everybody. Mo Davis, the Travis Outsider. Normally, you would be getting an episode of thoughts in my head while I drive to work, but I'm actually currently parked waiting on my mechanic and waiting for my turn to make my ride a little bit safer. And while I wait, I figured I'd share the thoughts in my head. When Black Lives Matter happened, when Floyd was murdered the way that he was after a series of young black people, many children, being murdered in horrific ways, I was triggered by my PTSD, and it got really bad at that time. And I never made the connection to why, even with therapy, even with healing, even with the work, I still felt something was off. And I'll tell you what that something is. It is incredibly difficult to see everyone that I cared about who was so vocal about Black Lives Matter say nothing about Philistine. Or even worse, gaslight, minimize, and plead the fifth when it comes to Philistine. And in a way, it's re-traumatizing because it makes me, as an individual who is Swana, who survived the effects of 9/11 on Swana people, the random checks, which really, let's call them what they are, checkpoints, the stereotyping, the harassment, the systemic abuse, the medical neglect. Someone who has survived the skinhead era, being lit on fire quite a few times as a child, being beaten to points of permanent disfigurement because of my Swana identity and my Muslim name. And I see these same individuals not only staying completely silent and saying nothing, but not even reaching out to me to see how I am or where I'm at. And I had a conversation with my best friend who's Lebanese the other day when she was visiting. She doesn't live here. And we looked at each other and we looked at our past because we grew up together. She is Lebanese. I'm Egyptian. She's Southern Lebanese. We talked about how systemically we were forced to gaslight ourselves into making jokes, belittling the systemic discrimination and the systemic abuses that we were enduring. And it wasn't for any reason other than to try and water down the shame. It wasn't even the fear, it was the shame. Like, I lived my whole life in fear, and I was brave because I had to be, because I was going to be murdered if I was not. But the shame was so hard to wash off. And we sat together in a Syrian restaurant and ate together and shared a meal. And we brought up that discussion. And we realized how much the propaganda worked so well that even we believed there was something inherently evil about who we were and some of the people who belonged to our tribes and our communities. And we were so scared to be put in the same category as T groups that we did everything we could as femme presenting people who are Swana to appear harmless and meek and agreeable. And bear with me, I did not sleep a wink last night. Not one, not a second. I had 0 sleep last night. I freaking tried. I could not. Why? Because I'm in a PTSD relapse. Because I'm trying to regulate my hormones. I'm in fight or flight mode. That same best friend when we were 18 told me something that I will never forget. She told me, Mo, you know who people really are when they are finally put in a position where they have to make a choice. And most of them will disappoint you. And I'm disappointed by a whole lot of people, and I can forgive myself because I've done the work. And I get it. People are going through shit. But I've been going through shit my whole life. I still never dehumanized or didn't think of or didn't consider my Philistine brothers and sisters. And at one point here in the West or in the global North, I was underexposed to the events. And so, although Philistine was in the back of my mind, that's where it was. It was in the back, not in the front and center. And as an Egyptian who is a descendant, who is the direct offspring of people who suffered when the Blue Star Nation invaded Egypt, as a displaced, colonized person who's been coerced in being within the diaspora, a racist diaspora, I have all your normal shit and a shit ton extra of my own. And so now I'm wondering, between the conversations with clients that are so degrading and so dehumanizing, and the 6 months in of deafening silence by people I know how to scream because they screamed for BLM. At what point do we get a break from having to look behind us to make sure we're not being stabbed in the back, while simultaneously looking in front of us to make sure we're not being stabbed in the face by someone smiling at us? I invite you all to sit in that discomfort. Have a day.